One of the greatest misconceptions about personal development is that transformation is an individual pursuit. We've been taught that if we simply work harder, read another book, listen to another podcast, consume another course, or become more disciplined, our lives would eventually change. And sometimes they do. But if you've ever made progress only to find yourself drifting back to familiar patterns, you've experienced something that strategy alone cannot solve. Identity doesn't develop in isolation. It develops in relationship, in conversation, in expectation, and in proximity. Think about it. Every room, every space, every environment you've ever walked into, it's quietly taught you something. Some rooms taught you to play small. Some rooms taught you to apologize for wanting more. Some rooms taught you that success requires you to become exhausted. Other rooms have taught you that asking for help is a weakness. And some rooms have taught you that wealth belongs to other people. The room is always teaching. The question is, what has your current room or your current space or your current environment been teaching you? Because here's what I've observed after coaching women through identity recalibration for years. We normalize whatever we're exposed to. So if everyone around you complains about money, financial struggle begins to feel ordinary. And if everyone around you is overwhelmed, peace starts to feel unrealistic. If everyone believes that success must come through sacrifice, you'll unconsciously defend exhaustion as evidence of your commitment. It's not because you're incapable of thinking differently, but because we as human beings, we adapt. We adapt to our environments, we absorb expectations, we calibrate to what's familiar. That's why two women with the same education, the same talent, the same intelligence can create completely different lives. They're not simply operating from different strategies, they're operating from different normals. So one woman is surrounded by conversations about possibility, and the other is surrounded by conversations about limitations. One woman would hear, "Of course you're charging that." And the other woman would hear, "Now who do you think you are charging that? Who does she think she is?" One woman would share a really bold vision, and the room that she's in, the space that she's in, the people in the room, they would say, "Okay, well great, what's the timeline?" And then the other woman would share the same vision, and the room that she's in would say, "What if it doesn't work?" Same woman, different room, different future. Now, here's the part that changed my life. When I was in foreclosure, I did not need another motivational quote, okay? I didn't need someone to tell me to work harder. I was working hard. I was working really, really hard. What I needed was a different environment. I needed to be around people who made my impossible feel ordinary. People who challenged the assumptions I'd mistaken for truth. People who didn't just teach wealth, they expected it. That proximity changed me, not overnight, but consistently. The woman who once wondered if she could save her home became the woman who went on to generate over $3 million in her business. The strategy mattered, absolutely. But the strategy only became sustainable because my identity changed first. And my identity changed because the room that I was spending the most time in changed. That's why I smile when people say, "Well, what the hell's going on inside of Unlimited, Shani? What are you guys doing in there?" Yes, there are teachings, extraordinary ones. In fact, I'm opening up the vault to the exact identity principles, wealth strategies, and embodiment practices that transformed my life and have helped countless women increase their income, strengthen their relationships, launch businesses, travel the world, and create the lives that they once believed were far out of reach. But if I'm completely honest, the curriculum isn't even the best asset within Unlimited. The room is, the space is, the environment is. Because in that room, different things become normal. Women celebrate each other's growth instead of competing with it. Money is discussed without shame. Rest isn't mistaken for laziness. Leadership isn't something that you apologize for. Boundaries are respected. And big visions aren't treated as unrealistic. No, they're examined, they're refined, they're supported, and they're expected. That's a completely different environment, wouldn't you say? And remember, environments quietly shape identities every single day. So a client of mine said something during one of our coaching sessions that I haven't been able to stop thinking about. She said, "For the first time in my life, I'm not the biggest dreamer in the room." And I couldn't stop smiling because that's the whole point. When your vision is no longer the biggest one in the room, your nervous system begins to relax. You stop wondering if you're asking for too much. And you start asking, how do I steward what's becoming possible? That, my friend, is an identity recalibration. Now, I hear women say all the time, I just need to believe in myself more. I know I do. Maybe. Or maybe you've simply spent too long in rooms that required you to explain your ambition before you'd be accepted. Maybe that. Imagine spending 6 months in a room where growth wasn't questioned, it's expected. Imagine spending 6 months around women who are actively recalibrating their own identities alongside you. Imagine what happens when excellence becomes ordinary, or when peace becomes your baseline. Imagine what happens when wealth is no longer something that's hoped for, but something that you're preparing to steward. That's what proximity does. It changes your normal. And once your normal begins to change, your decisions change, your standards change, your expectations begin to change, and eventually your life changes. Not because you forced it, but because the woman who created it changed. So here's the identity prescription. This is what I want you to do. I want you to take an honest look at the rooms that you've been normalizing, the spaces that you've been entertaining as much as possible. Pay attention to the conversations and to the expectations. Pay attention to the standards in those spaces. Pay attention to those beliefs. And then I want you to ask yourself one question. Are these environments introducing me to my future? That is, your manifested self, or continually reintroducing me to my past? Because your future isn't waiting for another strategy. It's waiting for an environment that calls forward a different version of you. Become the woman. Everything else follows. My name is Shani Leatham, and I help powerful women become recognizable to the lives they've been praying for.